Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Ladder on Cloud Calls, the podcast that guides you through the complex world of cloud cost optimization. I'm your host, Praneet Chandra, and every 2 weeks we deep dive into strategies, tools, and best practices that helps FinOps professionals, engineering leaders, and DevOps teams navigate the financial aspects of cloud. In today's episode, we have Victor, who's the creator of FinOps Weekly, one of the most read FinOps newsletter in industry right now, and a big fan, Victor. And he's also a cloud DevOps engineer that helps companies to reduce costs. How are you doing, Victor, today?
I'm doing well, Panit. Thanks for having me today here.
Great. Can you please tell me about your role? I think most of us know about you as a creator of FinOps Weekly, but would like to know more about what you actually do in real world apart from this brilliant newsletter that you have for us.
Yeah, so I work as a DevOps engineer, so I mainly work within Kubernetes stuff, infrastructure as code in the cloud, and several things, and that kind of expand me to research into FinOps, because after all, it's a very adjacent field, so that's where I am working right now.
That's great. And how did you find your calling with FinOps, right? Being a DevOps engineer, I've seen most of the DevOps engineers FinOps is there, but I'm more focused on DevOps. I'm more focused on CI/CD pipelines and other things. So how did you find your calling with FinOps? What inspired you all the way?
Yeah, so I have been working on that. I focus normally on scalability, but I realized that we were making some inefficient decisions in terms of the scalability for the projects, especially for POCs and stuff like that. So I ended up doing some cost optimization, and I researched a bit about what can be done on that field. And then I happened to find all the FinOps content around the foundation and around all of the cost optimization and generating value. And I realized that was a lot of bounded to the business and to the ROI that can be provided to the business. And that was a call for me. I am a very business-oriented person, and that make a match between finances and DevOps is completely matched into FinOps.
Wow, that's great, right? Because this is something I've realized in a lot of cases, right? I talk to a lot of DevOps engineers as part of my role, right? And most of them are very sacrosanct to their trade of being a DevOps engineer and not really thinking much from the business perspective. But I get it, right? That is what made you get into more of FinOps as such, right? Great. Now coming to my favorite questions, right? What are some of the most common misconceptions about cloud cost optimizations, right?
So I think the main one that you have to always go down with the costs. I think that the main concept that you have to understand in FinOps is getting the most out of every dollar in the cloud, and that's linked to ROI. So how much input you enter in terms of investment and how much are you able to generate. That's the basic of every business in any industry. That misconception about always getting down the bill is the first one that you need to definitely remove from your head and try to maximize the value instead of always dropping down, even though at the beginning tends to be the most efficient way to cut costs because there are quick wins, then try to gain value in the long term.
Great. And I think that's important, right? You touched upon this word called as ROI of cloud. And I think this is something that companies and leaders need to drive more, right? I think people are either stuck on this, let's just try to reduce costs, but they do not think, hey, if I'm getting my ROI, do I really need to, right? I think that's a great point around driving ROI for cloud. Yeah, very interesting. And what role does FinOps play in cost efficiency? And I will tell you why. I've heard from a lot of people, right? FinOps is all about reporting. FinOps is all about just having some good practices. Or FinOps is all about having, how do you get your organization ready for future? But how does FinOps actually get into cost efficiency? Where do you see FinOps fitting it in cost efficiency process for an org?
So I think there are two main things that the FinOps could do. First is create the environment and the culture and the awareness for the whole company to think about FinOps and to think about costs where you're developing. Because I come from a more developer background, and moving into DevOps, we don't think that much, especially beforehand, on how much this is costing to the company or to whatever is developing. So if you introduce that metric in your thinking while you are developing, that makes your developments and your architecture much more efficient since the beginning, because you are less prone to make cost errors, let's say that way, on your development. That's the first thing. And the second thing are tools. Like engineers, product people don't have the time to think about FinOps tools and consider them and evaluate them all together or build them if there is not a dedicated person or team into that, into filtering that and then sending them the output that they need to just execute. So I think that's the two main aspects that a FinOps role could have to improve the overall FinOps practices within the company.
That's great. And tell me, like, what are the key metrics, right, that a team should track, right? Like, as a DevOps engineer, right, you are the one that I found, like, who's doing the equivalent amount of DevOps and then the FinOps as well, right? What are the key metrics that teams should track for cloud cost optimization? We always hear this cost-centric culture, but we never talk further about, like, what are the metrics to actually measure this cost-centric culture. So what are those in your opinion?
One is like the unit economics, so it really depends on the application or the business case, what you should measure. So like cost per user, cost per, I don't know, X or 100 users on the long term, because you may have like a steep initial way and then it normalizes a lot. So you need to figure out those estimates. So all that unit economics related to your application is crucial. And then all the basics, like how much CPU are you consuming, how much this is costing for you, are you right sizing properly, is the memory consumption right, all the unit, let's say, metrics regarding to resource consumption, especially. That is very simple to understand for improving and for doing some right sizing. Those are probably the two main groups that I would focus on.
Got it. And that makes a lot of sense to me, like especially in key metrics, right? Especially like the thing that you talked about, what's my cost per user or revenue per user in order to get over there. I think that's an interesting angle. I think that's a great Easter egg for our listeners as well, right? And then this is the most common question that I get, right, in my thing. Like, what are the tips for people and companies starting in cloud optimization journey, right? What are your top tips, top 5 tips or top 3 tips, whatever you feel like would love to listen to that.
Okay, so yeah, first of all, I think is to understand the concept of FinOps in terms of cloud cost optimization plus business value. Try to understand all of that. It can be a bit overwhelming, all the information that is within FinOps now. So it's you can start off of that point. Then focus on one thing at a time. Which I mean by that is, if you are a role into product that you are interested in the FinOps, search for information regarding to product decision within FinOps. Don't search for many technical things or data analytic stuff. Just focus on your role, because there are, I think, information for almost everyone in the pipeline. So focus on your role and get all this information together. And finally, I think that this is in general something that needs focus on. But yeah, focus on the KPIs. Try to measure what you're doing. Like if you are spending, I don't know, $100 a month on a POC, and you spend a day, you are probably wasting money of the company, because your day is worth more than $100. So focus on another things or try to make it in another way. So think about what you're going to do in FinOps and how much the value is going to be. ROI is always the concept you need to focus when you are thinking about FinOps.
That's great. I think it's very, very crucial. You have touched this point, right? Is the ROI of cost optimization really worth it, right? Because sometimes I feel like teams try to automate bits and pieces that actually happen once in a lifetime, right? And doesn't happen on a regular basis. So do we really need to automate it? I think that's a very great point and very legitimate point. And I've got one bonus question for you, Victor, is we read you are an excellent source of everything that's happening in the world of FinOps. But where do you gain your knowledge from, right? What are your go-to tools? What are your go-to publications? I know I might be asking for secret sauce, but would love to know that. Our listeners would definitely love to know that.
Yeah, so after all, it takes time to get all the sources. If you search my first editions, they are a lot smaller and with a lot of bits and pieces. But I don't know. You can have really good blogs out there. The foundation is great. All the companies within FinOps provide really good material. So definitely not only just marketing stuff as well as you are doing. You provide really good stuff on online. So definitely check the vendors' informations. And yeah, then there are general technical blogs that from time to time they publish about FinOps. So with some queries and some advanced search on Google, you can get some information that is really good.
That's great. Yeah. I think I would like to say thank you, Victor. And that wraps up our another episode of the Latte on Cloud Cost. I hope you have gained some valuable insights that you can apply to your own cloud cost optimization efforts. Until then, keep optimizing and may your cloud costs always trend downward. This is Praneet Chandra signing off from the Latte on Cloud Cost. And don't forget to subscribe to FinOps Weekly. I think it's a brilliant newsletter. I read it on a daily basis, like whenever I get it through. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye bye.